The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author.
This podcast is a discussion, shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
The interpretations presented in this podcast are just a few of many possibilities. Listeners are encouraged to read along and share their own analysis of the text.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning.
Explicit language as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, depression, self-harm, and death will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
If you are enjoying the podcast, check out our Patreon for more exclusive content. You can find us at patreon.com/BookTok for BookTok.
Welcome to BookTok for BookTok with Jack and Amy, a literary podcast where we deep dive into the writings of your favorite novels. This winter, we're hosting a book club while we prepare our 10-part literary analysis of Sarah J. Maas's Throne of Glass. This is Jack.
And I'm Amy, and each week we'll discuss one book from our winter book club roster. By using our literary background, we'll provide our flash analysis of each book as well as discuss listener thoughts.
This week, we're discussing Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. We're here. We're discussing Once Upon a Broken Heart. Would you like to go first?
No, I'm so curious what you think, since I know you didn't you alluded to the fact you didn't quite like this book.
I would not have finished this book if it wasn't because of Winter Book Club.
Okay. What's your 10-word description of it?
It's going to be harsh, and I want to preface this by saying I don't think this is a bad book. This is absolutely about my cup of tea. So I'm putting that at the top. A juvenile book with an attempt of depth but fails. I'm really liking this 10 word thing because I'm counting the ands, I'm counting the A's.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good exercise. We have to do it every episode now.
I mean, that's what we've been doing. Yeah. Okay, you too. Now you go. I'm counting.
I'm trying to be really succinct and not sacrifice any unnecessary. I need to sacrifice all unnecessary words.
Book good.
Caveman.
Welcome to the caveman segment.
Paying homage to the Cruel Prince, but less sophisticated.
Wow, you had one word left.
Wow.
Do you want to add BAM?
Mic drop.
That's two words. Someone over. Yeah. So I feel like you didn't have as intense of a reaction as I did, because when I hinted to wasn't a fan, you actually said that you didn't mind it, that you kind of enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think I went in not expecting a lot, and I think it's pretty clear straight off the bat that Evangeline, our female main character, is pretty young. I want to say she's 17 or 18.
Yes, this is a YA book.
This is a YA book, and I had that impression, if not straight out knew that going in.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a lot of expectations in terms of depth, which maybe after all the other books we read was fine by me. I think it was a nice reprieve from some of the other heavier topics we've been dealing with. I feel like I see some elements of Holly Black's storytelling in this novel. And so I kind of approached it from that point of view. If this were the Cruel Prince, do I feel like it achieves what it sets out to do?
I did not make the link to Cruel Prince at all. What is it that you feel like you saw with Cruel Prince? Because I agree, YA. I'm not against YA, and I also don't think YA necessarily has to mean lack of depth. I think about Cruel Prince itself. I think about Ruthless Vows, even Harry Potter, you know what I mean? I think it can still be rich. And for a world that's so busy, I didn't find it to be rich. But you and I walked away really liking Cruel Prince, and I totally didn't make that connection. So what was the connection for you?
So I felt like the Prince of Hearts, Jax, was a Cardan archetype. I felt like it was straight off the page. Him, black hair, tall, thin, magical, kind of a little bit cruel in how he uses his magic. I felt like that was a carbon copy almost.
Interesting.
Not in a bad way. I felt like he was your typical mischievous fae that fit a stereotype that I like. Evangeline, on the other hand, isn't necessarily in my mind Jude. She's Jude's twin sister. And Evangeline's stepsister, Marisol, is Jude in this case.
Wow.
So I saw it as a kind of a flip-flop situation.
Interesting. I like that more. Like it makes me kind of like it a little bit more. I still don't, not a fan, but it makes me appreciate it a little bit more if it was what if the twin Jude situation. My one hang up with all of it is that even when if we're going to make the comparison, which is cruel, pun intended, within itself because of how this is such a bitch statement to make because of how talented and how incredible that book is. When you look at Jude and you look at her twin, even her twin had a lot of depth to her. And that's the thing where it's like, I like what you're hinting at. I like where, like what if there was more to this? And I feel like when it came to Evangeline, I had 0 layers with her. You had someone who really wants to be loved. As someone who wants to be loved, I get it. But that was it. That was it. That was her personality trait. She was willing to go and do what she could, and then immediately was like, oh, that was a mistake. I regret it. I should never have done it. And I think the one type of growth, and it's not even the biggest growth, but the one type of growth we had was at the very beginning was like, oh, I made a mistake and these are my consequences. But it also didn't have growth beyond that, like, because even at the very end of the book, it was still like, I kind of liked where her and Jax were at the very end, kind of having a more honest conversation. But,
I can see what you're saying. I can see how you feel like there's lack of character growth. And maybe that is the case. I think she spends a lot of time either wanting to be loved and doubting the people who love her, or doubting people around her and trying to convince herself that no, she needs to trust them.
Yeah.
And that is the bulk of her character arc in this book.
And it's just, it flip-flops. Like, that's all it does. Like, now, and, especially since, like, the pacing, and we'll get into the pacing in a little bit, it's so quick, and it's just like, now I feel this way, and now I feel this way, and now I'm back to feeling the other way.
Okay, I can see what you're saying. I would be interested in looking at this book in the context of the entire series, because we haven't read the entire series.
Pardon? I went and looked it up.
Oh, you did?
This was the only way I could get through it. I was like, I need to know what happens, because what if what happens, I feel better about it?
Yeah.
And the answer is meh.
Okay.
The answer is meh.
Okay. Well, I know nothing about the follow-up books. And I would be interested to see if this is maybe an error of judgment in the overall character arc, right? Maybe she does have a good character arc over the spread of several books.
Yeah.
But unlike what we're used to maybe with SJM, we didn't see a character arc within this one book itself. Yeah. And that it's part of a bigger narrative.
I also feel like for a character that has one drive, and that is find love, I'm okay with that being the one thing that drives someone, because, like, at the very start, it was, and to clarify, we didn't preface this. We listened to it. We did not read this book. That's going to be the case for the whole season, because we got to get through this quickly, guys. We're doing 2 books a week. We be hustling. At the very beginning, it does preface for anyone who's had their heart broken. And I was excited about it. I was like, hey, right here, I'm your girl. Sign me up. So I'm not against someone saying, like, that's their journey, is a broken heart, is to recover, is to find love. But there's so much more that it could have been. It could have been like, I'm searching for this love because my parents are gone. I'm searching for this love because I don't get this from my stepmom or my stepsister. I'm searching for this love because I am so alone, and I am trying to recapture the only time in my life where I was happy, and that's when I had my family. You know what I mean? Boom.
I did see it as all of the above. I saw it as all of that, and the fact that Marisol stole Luke from her.
I feel like it's all of the above, and I feel like she didn't come to that conclusion.
You mean Evangeline herself didn't come to that conclusion?
I think there just needed to be that one moment of, why am I so hungry for this? Why do I need this to feel fulfilled? Like, and that's the only thing, especially since she was, like, willing to marry the prince after one night, and she was like, well, maybe I can love him. This could be fine. She's choosing willful ignorance. Like, we've talked about that before, which, again, it could be fine. but there was no payoff in her realization at the end for all of it, because then it just keeps it so high level thought process that I'm like, just one moment of, huh, maybe I got some more issues.
I felt like, and I could be misremembering
No, you're
this.
probably remembering, and I was probably blocking it all out. Just be like, get through this.
I feel like there was a moment when Evangeline and what is the prince's name? Apollo. I feel like there was a moment when she was like, can you just stay and hold me tonight? There is a moment of reflection that she hasn't had this
Mm-hmm.
since her parents died, since before her parents died, that no one's held her like this, and how
Yeah,
much she missed that and how restful it was to have
that's
that.
fair. That's fair.
And she feels like a twinge of, oh my God, I could really develop feelings because of this one simple act,
Yeah.
because she is so starved for it. So I think there are hints of it. I agree that it's not overt. I agree that it needed to be something more substantive for us to feel connected to the character.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I do wonder if that speaks to choosing to save it for a larger character arc rather than encapsulating it in this book.
Like, and I will totally be the first to say, I came from this book from Trial of the Sun Queen, from
Mm-hmm.
Spark of the Everflame,
Mm-hmm.
where we have such complex emotions and feelings, and these female characters are so incredible. It felt like it had so many layers to both these books, and I'm coming from a high from everything we've covered, and then I come to this, and so it's like, I do think that maybe had I come to it from a different mindset, because
Mm-hmm.
think about when we covered Ruthless Vows. A lot of people didn't care for Ruthless Vows, but we covered it after the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and that was such a like warm little fuzzy feeling. And then we went to Ruthless Vows, and that was kind of like a little fuzzy feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I do recognize that my palette was somewhere else
Yeah,
coming to this.
you needed a palate cleanser.
I
Where
did sneak in a stalker romance in between.
uh, complex emotions.
Yeah.
Um,
Palette cleansing, Amy, palette cleansing.
I feel like this is more the palate cleanser for Light Lark.
Yes. Yes, I will agree with that. Like, this has gotten me, like, Light Lark I was a little nervous about, but I agree. Like,
Yeah.
this warmed me up for Light Lark.
Yeah, and we can talk about that next week.
Yeah.
I do want to go back to the fact, though, that our female main character is 17 or 18.
Yeah.
And how you deal with a broken heart at that age is very, very different from how you might deal with it in your 30s.
Yeah, I can go back. I remember when I was stupid. That's fine. I have no problems reflecting upon that. What doesn't help is some of the other aspects. However, before I keep talking about what I dislike, I would like to read some things that listeners did like. Oh, you guys, I'm so sorry. Because a lot of people said that they really like the world. So I quote a couple, I'm going to read a couple of these. I really like the whimsical setting and enjoyed meeting more of the fates. The whimsical writing, very descriptive and easy to read. Imagine the scenes, the whimsy of it all. And yeah, so people really I liked the little fairy tale aspects to it. Love the whimsical and fantastical. So let's talk a little bit about the world. And I want you to talk first, because I don't want to read all these positive comments and then come shit on it. So please.
Yeah. Well, I think it starts with the prologue. I think it's the prologue, not chapter 1, where we start from the perspective of the doorbell.
Yes.
And it chimes prior to, I think, what we know to be Luke later on.
Yep.
Before he enters. And the doorbell's like, I'm trying to warn her, but she's so dumb, she's going to think of this as a sign.
Yeah.
I think that starts off as great world building, because
Agreed.
it tells us that this is a fantastical world and we are going to encounter characters who read the signs wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that does a really great job of setting it up. I thought it was hilarious. And I did love this idea of fates stuck in a card deck and chaos erupting when the fates unleash themselves again. It's no different than, gods on Olympus coming down to decide to living with the mortals.
Yep.
It's the same idea. So I liked that spin on it. It's almost like a tarot deck that's come to life. So I liked that. I really enjoyed this idea of fairy tales not being properly remembered and changing a little bit from person to person, or not knowing the ending. That felt again adds to the fantastical nature of this. So I think without having to create a world like Harry Potter,
Yeah.
I felt like Garber did something that felt kind of Victorian,
Mm-hmm.
feels familiar to us,
Mm-hmm.
but has enough fantastical elements that it does make it feel like a unique world.
Yeah, she pick and chose things that we're all familiar with, and by
Mm-hmm.
doing that, created something unique.
Yeah.
So
Like the
I
little
agree.
dragons that roast apples.
Yeah,
It's a cute idea.
it is cute. And yes, I'm happy that you're talking about it because I'm like, okay, that is sweet. That is cute. Because I'm bad in the sense of like, when I have an opinion, I'm just like, fuck it all. And that's my problem. I know this. I will say one of the things that you could look at it as a positive, and you could look at it if you're me, where I'm like, I'm so annoyed at this other thing, so everything's negative. But it reminded me of The World of Stardust, the movie. I love that movie so freaking much. And I felt like that world is very fantastical too. It's almost like a parody within itself and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And but I mean that's the concept of fantastical. And yeah, I love that movie. I love that world. And I could see a lot of elements from there to here. You know, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of Ella Enchanted, a little bit of just that like really high level of fantasy. Now, because my interpretation of the plot of the character was so high level superficial, the reason why I ended up walking away with a slight dislike of the world is because everything there is high level superficial because she pick and chose from things that we're already familiar with and comfortable with. The bells thing I actually really loved. Like there are elements to it that I really did enjoy. I think that the bells was a very clever thing. I appreciate that the very first thing we see is Evangeline walking through a door that she shouldn't have been able to, and then we find out that she's a key. Like that, like there are things that, yes, like those are, or prophecies are like different pegs to a key and
Mm-hmm.
opens up. You know, there's a lot of stuff to it that I did enjoy. I think because some of the fantastical stuff directly impacts the plot and I
Mm-hmm.
struggle with the plot, that's where I'm like, is it hurting it a little bit? Yeah, I'm trying to be positive.
So I'm going to challenge you. I think that
Yeah, yeah.
if you came at this book at a different time,
I would love it more.
you would view this a little differently.
Yes.
So I read Stardust when I was in middle school, so I don't really remember a lot of it. And I'm not familiar with Ella Enchanted. I
Wait, you've
can
never
see,
watched Ella Enchanted?
no,
What about Stardust? Did you watch Stardust?
when it first came out, but I
Oh
really
my
don't remember it.
god. All right. Well, issues for another time. Continue.
So I want to challenge your point because a lot of the Fae books we read about Fae
Yep.
lore
Yep.
builds off the same Fae lore over and over again, right?
You are
And so,
correct. Yeah.
so I think the question is not what did Garber build off of that we're familiar with, but did she do enough that was unique to her world to make it different enough that it feels like it belongs solely to this book?
Yeah. The world is distinct. I will agree with this. Like, this world is her world. I could picture it. I could imagine it. It was very much, this is the world that we're getting. This is
Mhm.
what it's like in the North. And I will say it was very consistent, you know, like the
Yeah.
stories that people forgot versus when they could remember them. Like the
Mhm.
world was, whether you like it or not, but the world is a very definitive world. No, keep challenging me. All the things you're saying are right. I'm annoyed that I didn't like it. This might be a book that one day I come back to when I'm in a
Mhm.
different vibe and maybe I'll really enjoy it. And I think
Yeah.
maybe this is a book that I have to read versus listen to,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes some books I just can't read, but I enjoy listening,
Mhm.
and vice
And vice
versa.
versa. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I'm going to say, because I equated it to Cruel Prince, you couldn't read Cruel Prince 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just might be timing, it
Mm,
might be headspace, and that's okay.
and that's okay.
I feel like what is evident to me in this novel is that Garber has done a lot of planning because she
Yeah.
is very consistent. You don't get lost or you don't forget what everyone's forgetting. You're
Hmm.
like, oh, yeah, that's the thing everyone forgets. So you know when you're getting new information, you know what you're hungry for because, and it's the same thing that Evangeline is hungry for in terms of information. So I do feel like this is a great setup book for
Hmm.
whatever comes next. That being said, it was a lot of setup, but unlike Spark of the Everflame or Trial of the Sun Queen, I wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like there was just a little more that I wanted from it in terms of plot.
Yeah.
And that makes it more plot and less setup that I don't feel I got in Once Upon a Broken Heart.
This is a great segue to one of the comments on the negative side, because we asked people, what do you like? What did you not like? And one of the things that someone said that they didn't like, and I can agree with that, and I think it lends to what you're saying, is sometimes it was hard to keep up with the plot. And then other comments are along the similar lines of sometimes 12 different things are happening at once. We're hopping from one to the other to the other. So talk about that.
I guess I didn't find it difficult because SJM has trained us for this kind of stuff, where you're getting a lot of information about a lot of different things with the plot. I don't know. I didn't have a hard time focusing. I had an easy time absorbing the information, but that's just me.
No, I'm going to challenge. I don't think, and this is me having not spoken to these listeners, so I'm going to interpret what they said. I don't find that the plot was difficult to understand. I don't think that that's the case. I think that it's fair to say that maybe SJM and other authors can prepare us for books that keep going, keep rolling.
Mm-hmm.
However, you go from, okay, I'm asking for love. Now everyone's in stone. Now I'm in stone. Now I'm not in stone. Now I'm going up north. Now I'm falling. Now I'm kissing this prince. Now the prince is in love with me. Like it just, and everything within the timeline happens so quickly too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she kisses him and he's in love with her. And we get like a few sentences of he, sends her all these elaborate gifts every single night for a week. And now she's been accused of, like, when she was accused of murdering him, I looked at the time and was like, we still have more to go. And this book is still like, it just keeps going. And then they go to the vampires and then they see Luke. And then now Jax has been bitten. And now how do we get out of there? And now the Marisol, like, it wasn't hard at all. Like I don't find that the plot it's not like a Crescent City where I was like, what just happened? I don't get what we're getting. Like how did Hunt turn into the one who betrayed Bryce? Like we didn't get any of those moments.
Yeah.
But it just ran. The entire thing was a sprint from the get-go. I felt like each plot line was open, introduced, and closed.
Mm-hmm.
Open, introduce, and close. Now for the next one. I couldn't really tell you like what's the plot of the whole book. I can tell you all the little storylines, but what is the overarching plot there? And in that sense, I feel like it does experiment with the concept of a book. And I can applaud authors who attempt to divert from the classic beginning, middle, end, who do challenge what is the structure of a book. I respect those things, but make it better for me, Amy.
So, I mean, to me, this feels like a classic YA in going from place to place to place. And a lot is happening in the plot, but the through line is very simple.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, the through line is Evangeline wants to find love. The Prince of Hearts has made this bargain with her that hangs over her head. And that's why the plot goes in a lot of different directions. It doesn't feel any different to me than a Cassandra Clare book, or feels very similar to Lightlark. It doesn't feel that much different than other YA books that I've read in terms of going to a lot of different places as part of the storytelling.
Here's what I'll counter to that. The reason why I think it is separate to a Lightlark, to Cassandra Clare, is that at the very beginning, it's we need to X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
At the very end, that's what they're working towards. Now, are there other things that come in? There's challenges, there's other stuff, there's things that you're trying to get through. But point A, you clearly see we need to do this in order to save that. That is our mission for the book. That's and that's not just YA, that's, a lot of other books, but think about Harry Potter, think about Hunger Games, even with Lightlark, and you can go on mini side quests and stuff and things can happen, but there's always that one goal that they're working towards. Her finding love isn't enough of a goal for me.
I agree, but I do also think that her goal changes. I mean, here's what I think causes what I'm going to term as the mess for everyone.
Yeah.
It's that we've got two very different competing goals happening in this book. We've got Evangeline searching for love. That's all she cares about.
Yeah.
But what's dominating the storytelling is this unknown desire of the Prince of Hearts, of Jax, to find the Valerie Gate.
Yeah.
and find that key. And our female protagonist keeps trying to resist it, and we don't
Mm-hmm.
quite understand Jack's goal the whole way. Or we know now what the goal is, but not his motivation. And that dominates our female main character.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it dominates her story. And I think that may be what makes the plot feel like it's all over the place, because we're warring with two main goals, two through lines. There's no alignment, because at least in Crescent City, Hunt and Bryce might have different motivations, but they're both aligned on finding Danica's murderer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same with House of Sky and Breath. People might have different opinions, but everyone's aligned on find Emil, find Sophie.
Yeah, yeah. We don't really get Jax, like, we don't get introduced to Jax's goal until well into the book. Like,
Yeah.
we don't realize that, and having now known what his goal is and stuff, I can tell you, like, his goal is, like, we are well into the book before he has a definitive goal.
Mhm.
And that requires then me having been on board with Evangeline's goal for
Mhm.
the first 30, 35, 40% of the book.
Yeah, that's true.
And so while they're competing goals, you can't introduce a race, you know, a racer in the middle of the book of the race, right? Like a competitor, because then it's like, okay, well, now this mysterious thing that Jax has been after, if that's why he did help her, if that's why, you know, all these other
Yeah.
things, his stuff doesn't happen until later. And
Yeah.
that's what still doesn't make it still a through line, because like, and I agree, like, you know, you have two different things competing, but the competition doesn't start until almost midway through.
That's a fair point. And I will say, and a reason that maybe this is a difficult book for some people, or, you know, aspects of the plot might be difficult for people, is the fact that I was more interested in Jax as a character than I was in Evangeline.
Yeah.
I don't really care if Evangeline finds love. I'm more interested in uncovering what Jax is all about.
That is fair. Now let's go into some positive comments. People are big fan of Jax. They say the banter between Jax and Evangeline. I'm just gonna say Jax because she ain't got no banter. Jax. Everyone loves Jax. I love Jax in the series. Was so glad to get more of him. Oh, there's another series, Caraval, that he's in that series too. Interesting.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, I had no idea. Yeah, but a lot of people are reading through all the comments, Jax, 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 and they're not talking about me. So, you know, that's I agree. I think Jax was the most interesting character in the book. And even when you have these moments where she describes Jax as being confused and hurt all in one look, but then quickly covers it up, you know, like those are little moments that adds the depth, adds the layers, you know, like you almost wonder, does he like her? Does he not like her? I don't think that there's ever a moment where he's romantically interested in her. I think that she interprets his charm and banter as potential, maybe not interest, but it's what makes her like him. And, you know, that could be very much like, I'm like, damn it, girl, that I get that. Stop it. I feel that very hard. I'm 35 and I still get it, where I'm like, I texted you this week where I was like,
Yeah.
damn it, this person is just super charming. And I guess like we're married now. I think
we fall into the trap constantly.
Oh, absolutely. I think what I sent you was direct a quote of why did he laugh at my jokes? I think we're expecting a child now. Like I'm now pregnant. Yeah. So it is very, I get that. And that's what does make me like him.
Yeah.
And it makes me kind of like her because it is not like her. It makes me like interested in her more. Like the only thing that's for me personally fascinating about her is the fact that you can see her struggle a little bit with attraction towards him when he does not have one with her.
Towards her.
Yeah.
And that's very real.
Yes.
Right?
Oh yeah. But don't I know it?
I mean, I do too. I've been in that situation plenty in my life.
Yeah.
And maybe that makes us capable of empathy for her, even if we don't necessarily love her purpose in life or in this book.
But like Jax is a funny guy. I love this concept of he is doomed to kill every woman who is not his one true love.
So tragic.
And the amount of times he must have thought that he met his one true love.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of times that he was like, wow, maybe she's it. And you can't test it without killing her.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense why he's so closed off and he's so bitter and he doesn't
Yeah.
trust anyone. He
Yeah.
can't trust himself.
You know what? If this was not a YA book, this is me. I'm sorry. I know I'm talking about children in this, but like, let's pretend I'm not. If this was
Let's
not a
pretend they're
YA,
25.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Jax is a fate. He's like forever
Yeah,
years
yeah,
old.
yeah, yeah.
But she's whatever. Okay, so she's 25. He's still a fate. I feel like there would have been a scene where he was like I don't love you, but like I'm physically attracted to you and I can't kiss you, and then they would have sex without kissing.
Or he's like, to make up for it, I'm going to kiss you down there.
Yeah, I thought about that. I was like, does that count? Is it like what is it? Is it like lips? Because like which ones, you know? And
Yeah.
no, I was like, if this was not a YA, I feel like there'd be a sex scene without kissing. And I feel like that could have been really good. Obviously I don't want that because I just like there was nothing about these characters that made me find them like, ooh, I wish they were older. You know what? Like it's not it's not like when I read Throne of Glass where I was like, just age them up.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, like I'll bring it up to someone and be like, oh yeah, they're like she's like 19 or 17, like she's very young, and
She's very young.
I think she might even be younger than that. And
I feel like she starts Throne of Glass as like 16 or something. I
yeah,
could be wrong. I could be misremembering.
I mean, stick around for January when we do our analysis of Throne of Glass and we'll figure it out. But I mentioned that to our friend and she was like, nope, she's 30. Can't tell me otherwise. I refuse.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, people in their 30s can't move the way Aelin.
No, I can't. I can't. It's hard. One character that I did find interesting was her stepsister, Marisol. I'm feel. Can you see the conflicting emotions and thoughts like all happening at once? Where I'm like, I haven't thought about this, and all my thoughts are happening once. I like that we had a lot of moments where we could give Marisol a chance and think, oh, maybe she's not that bad. You know, the spell book disguised as a recipe book. You know, there were plenty of moments where we could say like, oh, wow, like, you know, I guess maybe she really is good, right? I do like that she ended up being one of the bad guys. I'm not a kind of person that like needs to necessarily be like, no woman could be a bad guy. I'm like, hell no, I've met plenty of bad women. But I don't know. I would have liked a little bit more pizzazz at the end. But then again, I was listening to it at 2 speed at that point, and I was like, let's get through this.
So I also feel conflicting emotions about Marisol. I like the idea of Evangeline doubting Marisol, justifying Marisol's actions, trusting Marisol despite what everyone else might be saying about her.
Yeah.
I don't love the message that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
That's a good one.
Marisol, because she has this awful mother, is also going to be awful.
Yeah.
I didn't love that message. I really wanted Marisol to be good because I wanted her to be the antithesis to her mother.
Yeah.
So I feel conflicted about it. Like I think Garber did a good job making us question what we think about Marisol.
Yeah.
And I understand why it was Marisol in the end. Did it have to be Marisol?
I agree. You know, another thing that I didn't really love, at first I was excited about the point where I was like, Evangeline, this is the one time you're pulling me back. Make me be on your side, was when she was thinking maybe Luke was just a bad guy. And I think that would have been a much better lesson or something than, oh, so it was the evil stepsister the whole time.
Yeah.
I feel like both would have been good stories, you know what I mean? And I personally lean more towards he was just a shitty guy who went after her, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I would have rather that storyline and then Evangeline realizing she had love all the time.
Yes.
By having her stepsister, like she could have built a really strong relationship with her stepsister.
Yes.
Rather than fulfilling the stereotypical archetype of the stepsister is ugly and evil.
And it just ends up being like, it starts with jealousy, because that's the other thing is that the stepsister said, well, I saw what you had with Luke. And rather than choosing any other man in the world to enchant, she chose her sisters. So, you know, it comes from and she says it came from jealousy. Everyone still loves you. I want to emphasize, I think it's okay to portray negative women. Like, you know, like they exist in this world. I don't need every single woman to be this like hero. I'm okay with it. I agree. Another message that needed to happen was, wow, you had love the whole time. You were just
Yeah.
like so desperate for romantic love.
Yeah.
That's a more impactful message.
I agree.
Men ain't shit is another impactful message.
Yeah.
I wish that there was, I don't know, whether it's introducing a new character or,
Mhm.
we kind of get like this moment with Lala and and talk about like another band-aid moment of we're friends. I'm the one,
Yeah.
I'm going to be your female friend now.
Yeah. It's true. I know that this book already has a lot of different characters and that more characters can be overwhelming in a new world, especially for a first book. So I understand maybe that the choice to not have an additional character. However, I wish the female bad guy, the
Yeah,
female
yeah,
antagonist, had not been the stepsister. I wish it
yeah.
had been a different friend. I wish there was something that had brought Marisol and Evangeline together, because I don't think there are enough stories out there that show love between step siblings, because that does
Yes.
exist.
Hey, look at me and my sister.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think Garber could have achieved what she wanted to achieve and still allow these stepsisters to truly love each other and support each other.
I think you could still have had Marisol made a mistake, some kind of
Mm.
enchanting mistake. I here's a fix that I would have had. What if Luke was a shitty guy who did
Mhm.
approach her, who all of a sudden, like, and Marisol realized that he was using her and her sister, busted out the potion, and then, she was like, I didn't realize it was going to go that hardcore.
Mhm.
Because there was a moment when Evangeline was like, oh my God, I made a mistake too. I
Yeah.
turned you guys all to stone. And then that would have been like, oh my God, I poisoned Luke. Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that would have been like a fun moment of, hey, here's an example of two women that will do whatever they can to keep a really shitty guy,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
maybe have them learn from it.
Yeah. Like, and then, wow, the love that was more important was what we had together, Yeah, that would have been great. I think you could have had that. Oh no, because Marisol was the one who poisoned the king, Apollo, right? Who's the one?
No,
Oh, her
Apollo
brother, the
was
brother.
the brother poisoned Apollo.
Yeah, yeah. No, you still like you could have had that and still had the plot as is.
Yeah, I mean, or have another female character. Have two
Yeah,
stepsisters. And there's one
yeah,
that she has a really good relationship with at the end, and there's one who was a shit.
yep.
Like,
If we're gonna do Cinderella, go full Cinderella. Go
yeah,
ever after. All right.
yeah, do it. Just
Yeah.
do it. Actually, Ever After is a good reference.
Jacqueline is the good stepsister.
She is the good stepsister.
I'm only here for the food, mother.
Sounds about right.
For both me and her. It is a direct quote from the both of us. Yes.
I mean, I think this could have been a great book
Yeah. Yeah.
with a couple small tweaks. I will, however, say I recognize that at the age of 17, 18, and just teenagers in general, because Marisol and Evangeline have spent some time together, not a lot,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
some time. I understand the dynamic of a young woman being jealous
Mhm.
of what another young woman has and
Yep.
stealing it. That does happen.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
recognize that those dynamics are not made up, they are real. But this is a piece of fiction. Why can't we why can't we make it better?
Yeah. Our friend Nicole, she said something to me like forever ago that was like super interesting, where she was talking about like violence against women in books and how, men use women in books. And I was, we're talking about romantasy and we're talking about SJM specifically.
Mhm.
And I said, well, it reflects of what women go through in this world and stuff. And she was like, it's a fantasy book. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah,
And I
it
was like,
doesn't have
oh,
to reflect this world.
yeah, it doesn't have to. And that's where I was like, oh shit. Now, as someone who, is working on their own fantasy book, no, that it's going to be reflecting. However, it's going to be reflected in a very purposeful way. Anyway, it is one of those things where it's like, it's a fantasy book. You can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, but at the same time, I also recognize sometimes we work through themes we see in the world or
Yeah,
in
yeah.
our own lives that we want to resolve.
Uh-huh.
And ultimately, that's why we might see similar attitudes,
Yeah.
beliefs, actions that reflect our society or people in our society, because that's what we're familiar with and that's what we're trying to process as an author.
No, I agree. As someone who I prefer personally seeing books, I mean, that maybe I would take it back. I don't prefer. I do relate to the books where the women have to struggle more.
Mhm.
Hello, real world. Because then I get to see the women who fight and, win. I always have to bring it up where it's like, it's the author's choice. And I'm like, you know what? It is. And it's going to be my choice too. It is what it is. So one thing that no one mentioned, but, we're here, we should mention it, is Apollo.
I love to struggle with this thought process of, okay, Apollo was enchanted.
Yeah, yeah.
And if the enchantment had not broken the way it broke, right? If
Yep.
the enchantment did not require heartbreak,
Yep.
if simply the possession of love is gone,
Ended.
could Apollo still have developed feelings for Evangeline?
Okay, I think yes, because it's impossible for Apollo to go back to what he was before. I think the Apollo that we meet at the very beginning couldn't have loved Evangeline. He is taking like a shirtless selfie, essentially. Like he's getting like a portrait done of him and everything. So I don't think that version of Apollo could have loved her. I think that, what series was it? It was another book. It was actually a K-drama that I watched. And it was like she enchanted him and, on accident. And then he fell in love with her and became obsessed with her. And he was like, I know that I do love you, but like, I know all this is fake, but I love this feeling so much. I don't want it to go away. Turns out there's like a whole past life situation. So he did love her. So like there's that.
Yeah.
However, I think that process made Apollo grow up, where it's like, oh, what does it feel like? And I think that's an interesting feeling. Like, what does it feel like to care about someone more than you care about yourself?
Yeah.
And that changes you. That totally changes you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I can't blame Evangeline for wondering, because I did wonder it a lot myself. And I'm curious to see how, the next book plays out. But Apollo, as a character, he was definitely the like two ends of the pendulum, like very self-absorbed to very like Evangeline centric. I found that very entertaining because I also found that it was mocking men in general.
Yeah. I wish this book mocked men more.
Yeah. Because it could have done a really good job of mocking men.
It did. Like, between Luke becoming a vampire, talk about like someone, men being emotional vampires that just use you and then, ditch, and then turns out, he's there. And then, the one man who's the fate of love can't find, kills the women, like this book could have been a wonderful parody of just trolling men.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a really lost opportunity, to be honest.
Yeah. I think I did like Apollo. I also really like that Apollo was not the most devastatingly attractive person. Because as someone who is an active fan of what I like to say, funny looking guys, not something you should ever tell someone you're actively dating, though.
No, it doesn't go
And yet I never learn. Every time.
Like, it's a compliment. I'm attracted to you.
I like them funny looking. Are you telling me you don't see it in yourself? Like, you look in the mirror and you don't see it?
You're probing their insecurities is what you are.
Like, oh, I'm just like, you're telling me that I'm not the catch here? Come on. I, as someone who is a fan of funny looking guys, I love that Apollo is not described as devastatingly handsome, but like his features make him interesting.
Yeah.
That's my type right there. Unless it's Theo James, you're perfection. Yeah, it's the whole overall book. Do you think you personally will go and continue to read the series?
It's not the first series I will finish out of all the books we've read for Winter Book Club.
Yeah.
But I will go back and finish it.
I will say the way that it ends, the whole series, I can appreciate it. Do you want me to tell you?
No.
All right.
I actually don't want to be spoiled. That's a rare
That is a rare
occurrence.
thing.
Yeah.
Talk about, like last week we were talking about how I needed to be spoiled and I hate being spoiled, and you love it. Now here I am, you're like, I had to.
Nope. I actually don't want to know.
Oh, interesting. All right, well, you let me know how it goes.
Okay.
I like it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jack and Amy. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we will be discussing Lightlark by Alex Astor.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. If you'd like to submit your take on any of the books we plan to discuss later this winter, please be sure to follow us on Instagram, where we ask for listener submissions.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. The best way, though, to support the show is to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle BookTalk and share, like, subscribe, make sure all your friends listen to an episode, get them hooked.
Yeah. You share, we'll share. Post it on stories, we'll share your story.
Bye.
Bye. Why she did what she did. Is there an earthquake coming?
No, it's my alarm.
Oh, okay.
It's my Kegel alarm.
Ready, together, and sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on the other one.
Okay. That's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I just got really excited.
I know. It's okay.